차이에 대한 이야기를 좀 해보고 싶습니다. 1957년도 마르셜 듀샹이 The Creative Act라는 그런 스테이트먼트를 통해 가지고선 모든 창의적인 생각과 창의적인 발상의 출발은 차이점, 갭에서 온다고 이야기를 했습니다. 그것은 뭐 창조자와 예술가와 그 다음에 관객, 스펙테이터 사이의 차이일 수도 있는데요. 기술이 예술로 넘어오게 되면서 이 차이가 굉장히 많이 발생하게 됩니다. 기술이 빠르게 변하기 때문에 기술의 다양성으로 인해 가지고선 예술을 바라보는 관점의 차이들이 많이 발생하는데요. 문제는 그 차이를 갖다가 부정할 것이 아니고 그 차이를 발견하고 그 차이에서 새로운 생각을 읽어낼 수 있느냐 없느냐가 굉장히 중요한 거고요. 오늘은 그 기술이라는 것이 단순히 과학적인 현상이 아니고 사회적인 가치가 있다고 생각합니다. 기술이 민주주의가 될 수 있는 거고요. 기술이 갖는 정치적인, 사회적인, 문화적인 가치가 있을 겁니다. 그래서 첫 번째 시간에는 그 태국에서 오신 그 프라펀 쿰진 교수님이신데요. 교수님 잠깐 설명을 해드리면은 길어서 제가 좀 읽도록 하겠습니다. 방콕 출라롱콩 대학교 미술대 아트센터 장이면서 교수님이시고요. 1997년 교수직을 맡았고 2004년부터 아트센터 디렉터도 역임하고 계십니다. 방콕 태생인데요. 그 어렸을 때부터 이분은 3개 국어가 가능하십니다. 그러니까 더치도 하시고 영어도 하시고 또 태국어도 하시고요. 그래서 그 국제적으로 이렇게 활동을 많이 하고 계십니다. 그 또한 이제 비영리 공간에서 쌓은 그 다양한 그런 실험적인 프로젝트를 통해 가지고선 그 전 세계에서 이런 식의 이제 강의를 많이 하고 계셔가지고선 오늘 소중한 시간이 될 것 같습니다. 예, 프라펀 교수님 모시겠습니다.
First of all, I would like to say thank you to my host. It's a wonderful pleasure to be here, and it's a great honor to be able to witness such exciting events.
Please use the mic, otherwise the translator cannot hear.
Yes. Okay, I'll bring it closer. Just to correct one fact, I used to speak Dutch. I no longer speak the language anymore, but I was just making a point earlier this morning about the fact that English is my third language. My first language was Dutch because I grew up partly in Holland. But now I'm very much based in Bangkok. And for my presentation today, I tackled the subject of future identity and imagination with something that's very relevant to me in terms of being in Thailand and also witnessing and being partly involved in supporting Thai artists who are going on to international art world. So my talk today is the convergence of moving image in Thai contemporary art and the divergence of contemporary Thainess. I emphasize the point Thainess because it's not really in any dictionary. It's a term that's commonly used to describe a sense of being Thai, which is something that is highly problematic within today's context. I use the term highly problematic because it's been the heart of recent problems, especially since 2006, when we had a coup d'etat, which is when the military took over the government. And the images that were projected throughout Thailand and the rest of the world is very much in line with this idea that the soldiers are defending the integrity of the monarchy. So very much depicted as the good guys. So these kinds of images were I guess, in moments of celebration, you know, people from the general public coming on to give roses and other flowers and bringing their children along. to cheer the soldiers. And this is something that's not new in Thailand. We've had 18 coups, 18 military takeovers in the past 30 years. So this is actually the first time that there's been so much, I guess, public display of support. Followed by 2008, which is when the same group of royalist supporters took over the airport. I haven't explained all of the events that took place before that, because I just wanted to show the key changes or the key points of attention. This is a very clear act of social pressure against the current government at that time, when they took over the airport and closed the airport for a few days. Notice the image of the king being held up particularly on this slide. And the yellow, the color yellow represents the color of the king's birthday. So it's nationally recognized as a color of the current king. And this is the other side of the kind of the separation of colors. This is in year 2010 when the red shirts took over Bangkok, and they were largely from outside, from the provinces, particularly from the northeast region of Thailand. So this is almost like an act of taking. This is one of the busiest shopping districts in downtown Bangkok. On the right-hand side is where the Louis Vuitton stores and the Gucci stores is just all here. And on the opposite side is one of the biggest department stores in the country. So this occupation was in fact taking central downtown economic region as hostage. And a series of other events went on, which concluded in the burning of several places, particularly in Bangkok and around provincial town halls. This is in 2010. Beginning in March, Red Shirts coverage on Bangkok. Sorry, not coverage. Red Shirts converge on Bangkok, held first big rally. And throughout this time, the government that ran the country was very, very much in controversy with the majority of the people. There are strong signals being sent out that the current government was not properly elected into power. So there's a constant struggle to basically have new elections. So finally in May, 19th of May 2010, the government decided to use the army to storm the protesters. And that's a very confusing time for both sides. Nobody really knew who was who, and the general feeling across Bangkok was in big confusion at that time. Generally, we couldn't really speak to even close friends, even family within families. It was tearing up the political divide. some families are outright pure royalist supporters, whilst others were questioning that whole authority. I trace back a little bit in terms of our history. Absolute monarchy in Thailand was abolished in 1932, but throughout that time, since 1930s, constitutional monarchy became a kind of a balance between military rule or kind of military government, and also at several times the monarchy have been kind of invited back to show strong presence, but not exactly hold absolute power like the previous years before 1932. So, sorry, something's... So in parallel with all of this internal political mainstream conflict, there's also another series of conflicts that's been happening in the southern border provinces between Thailand and Malaysia. This is a phenomenon that a lot of newspapers are saying or claiming that it began in year 2004. But in fact, it began much, much earlier than that. It began when the British Empire ran Malaysia. Historically, they knew about the possible conflict within the region because they have their own culture. It's a very traditional Muslim community with its own history that's just not easily pushed into kind of Malaysia geographical or political borders. They do want to have their own rule, and I mean I'm personally fascinated with the idea of the kind of history that it's shown to Thai people within Thailand. It's a very sensitive issue because it's something that the government are very, very uncomfortable about this. And more recently, there's been kind of new revelations of the kind of negotiations that had failed. Notice the highlights on the right-hand side. Thailand signs a breakthrough deal with Muslim rebels on 28th of February 2013. I mean, that was done in a relatively low-key event, but it was highly publicized in Malaysia, and it made the front-page newspapers in Thailand on that day. And the next day, you know, the 1st of March, there were a series of bombings across many of the regions, just to show that they are talking to not the right people. And it's a very difficult situation that not only separates the regional communities, but it also sends out very kind of harsh signals across Thailand that that there are proposals of separatists, and it's unclear which direction it will go, and it's unclear who the individual groups are. This is, I mean, just as a death count, there's been almost 5,400 deaths since 2004. That's been completely recorded. I mean, this is from both Buddhists and Muslims. And I think this is one of the better articles that I've found. It is written during December of last year, and it accounts for interviews with several groups of separatists. This is from the British newspaper Telegraph. And relating this to ideas of moving image, I've chosen a particularly relevant work by a Thai filmmaker who actually won his Cannes prize almost on the night of the eruption of the Red Shirt conflicts, of the burning down of the department stores and several buildings in Bangkok. This is Apichatpong Weerasethakul's work, which is Apichatpong is both a gallery artist and a filmmaker. He's been able to exist in both fields because he's an outsider to both worlds. Domestically speaking, his works have won at least 2 major awards at Cannes Film Festival and a number of other awards across the world in several festivals. But he's very, very, very much not recognized in Thailand. His films are watched by I guess fewer than 5,000 people, and it's not a commercial success. But during that time of the Red Shirts conflict, he had the podium at Cannes, and he sent out a very kind of clear signal that he was not for the current government at that time. I mean, these are like quite sensitive issues. His late father was in fact a party member of the Democrat, which was the ruling party at that time. So there were all these kind of in between the lines issues and quite sensitive issues. But the bottom line is that I think Apichatpong is both an insider and an outsider to Thainess. I use the term Thainess again because Apichatpong he lived with his parents who were both doctors. They were both of Chinese background. They were based in the northeast region of Thailand, which is very kind of upcountry region, whereby they have their local dialect. So even in his films, we see a lot of ideas of voyeurism on locals and local lifestyles or local cultures. And he brings that out in all of his films for me. Ideas of loose conversations with notions of ideas of anti-intellectualism in many ways. This particular film was something that he developed, or something that grew out of a publication that was handed out during funerals. So it's a very kind of folk tale, Buddhist sort of a tale about Uncle Bunmi and his and ideas of reincarnation and ideas of past lives. So it's very, on one hand, very surreal. Apichatpong studied architecture at Khon Kaen University and in northeast of Thailand. And then he went on to Chicago School of the Art Institute to study film. But it wasn't mainstream filmmaking. It was the more fine art orientated discipline. So Apichatpong is not the only artist who's questioning that notions of what exactly it is to be Thai. I think it's a constant theme that's been questioned regularly by Thai artists. My next slide is an artwork done by a very famous curator in Asia at the moment, Apinan Bosyanon, which is, I'm sure, to all the other curators with us today, will be a very familiar name. Apinan was also an outsider to Thailand. He went to school in the United Kingdom and came back to Thailand as an artist, as a painter. So in order to be recognized into the local art scene, he had to do painting, even though he wasn't really painting at that time, but he was a very skilled painter. And I remember an art critic speaking about Apinan's work at that time. He painted a horse just to show that he could paint. And that painting of a horse won him a national art prize. So then he quickly moved on to do very experimental works. This is one of his first video sculptures. Notice the term video sculpture, because at that time video art didn't exist. Apinan made references to the Mona Lisa and also ideas of Andy Warhol's repeated silkscreens, and that whole notions of questioning the whole art world or the whole Western art values in his work. How to explain art to a Bangkok cock. And then followed by a work by Manit Siwanichapum, who's strangely is the only Thai artist to be regarded as a main photographer or photo-based artist. He's the first, and I think still is one of the absolute very few of Thai photography visual artists, even though there are quite a few professional photo artists. Manit still, his background was also in commercial photography before he got involved in visual art filmmaking. And this is a work that uses archival images from the 70s. This is the public lynching of a suspected communist. Communists in those days were regarded as the devil, according to government propaganda. And systematic propaganda at that time was very much funded by the United States. And it worked rather effectively, because geographically speaking, Thailand still is bordering many of the communist countries. And this is this pink man is actually performed by a poet, Sompong Tui, who's worked consistently with Manit throughout that project, and it's a superimposed, juxtaposed image of the pink man wearing a shocking pink suit and sneering at everything, as though he was just a kind of a bystander who is enjoying the whole entertainment. Manit chose his archival images very carefully. He worked with readily available images, and this is just one of his series of horror in pink, made in 2001. And in 2012, Manit and his partner, Ing K, worked together on their second feature film. When I say feature film, it's an artist's movie made with professional equipment. Ing herself, Manit's partner, is she has a painting background, and her first film got censored, I think, in the late 80s, because it references aspects of the monarchy. But for this particular work, it's his, if I remember correctly, his third feature film, and the first feature film that won several awards in 2007 is called Citizen Juling, and it was a documentary made about a school teacher down in the southern provinces of Thailand. It just followed after she was assassinated or killed by a group of Muslim women. The filmmaker and Manit and his partner went in search of the story behind that teacher. The movie was called Citizen Juling. The teacher herself was from the far northern provinces of Thailand. So effectively, she kind of went all the way down across the country just to teach, and it was her first job as well. And this is following the success of that film. Shakespeare Must Die was done last year in 2012, and it was recently censored by the Thai government for having inappropriate political implications. This film is actually completely word for word scripted from Shakespeare's Macbeth, so it's definitely a very kind of international. It's an internationally recognized script and storyline. But the images and the implications had sensitive implications, even though it didn't directly refer to the government of Thailand at that time. It had strong enough references, and it actually won significant funding from the previous government, but then after the election took place, the current government banned the film. So I'm just gonna show a quick 2-minute trailer of the film. So.
บางครั้งเพื่อที่จะนำพาเราสู่หายนะเครื่องมือแห่งความมืดอาจบอกความจริงแก่เราหลอกให้เราตายใจด้วยรางวัลน้อยนิดที่ไร้ผิดภัยเพียงเพื่อจะหักหลังเราอย่างโหดเหี้ยมในที่สุดอนิจจาบ้านเมืองนาเว
แสดงของคุณหน้าตาคล้ายท่านผู้นำมากนี่คุณตั้งใจหรือเปล่า
อนิจจาบ้านเมืองนาเวทนาเจ้าแทบไม่กล้ารู้จักตัวเองไม่บังอาจเรียกว่าแผ่นดินแม่ที่แท้คือหลุมศพของเราไม่มีรอยยิ้มบนใบหน้าล้วนแต่คนบ้าผู้ไม่รับรู้สิ่งอันใดยินแต่เสียงทอดถอนลมหายใจครวญครางเสียงรำไห้อื่นไปทั่วเมืองบ้าบิ่นและแนวแน่ไม่มี บละไม้เป็นเรื่องธรรมดาและละไม้เป็นธรรมดาเมื่อรักครั้งประกาศเริ่มเบื่อหน่ายแสงตะวันอยากให้พินาศลงทั้งโลกาพายุเชิญโหมมาเลยหายนะโหมเข้ามาได้เลยอย่างน้อยเราจะได้ตายคาดาบในมือ
So my main bullet point for my presentation is basically about notions of censorship. The worst aspect of it for us Thais is self-censorship, which is something that's even worse than censorship itself, I think. I think from then on, there was a very popular soap opera that was on television, that the director saw the movie, the director's cut, and then responded from the censorship by making his own version for television drama, which was banned I mean, the whole series was banned. It wasn't that particular episode being censored. So this whole notions of political sensitivity is my kind of question for the future of art and of artistic freedom, because I think ultimately Thai artists do get by with voicing their opinion. It's just going to drive it further underground, or you know, it's impossible to really censor anything these days. I think it's just going to drive it into other channels and make the voice even more apparent. For example, I'm convinced that if this film was shown in Thailand, no more than 5,000 people would want to see it. But now, you know, 200,000 people definitely want to see it, just because it's been censored. So this is all my main point. Thank you very much for your attention.
예, 다음은 인도네시아에서 오신 애닌 수프리얀토 선생님을 모시도록 하겠습니다. 애닌 선생님은 지금 인도네시아에서 족자 비엔날레에서 국제 포럼을 담당하고 계시고요. 제가 이제 싱가포르 아트페어에서 이제 인도네시아 특별관에서 또 세미나를 주최하셔가지고서 그걸 통해 가지고서 알게 됐습니다. 애닌 수프리얀토 선생님을 모시겠습니다.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to this forum. And I would like to say thanks to my host, of course, the organizer of this conference, friends at the Daegu Art Factory, and of course, personal friends, Dayum, who invites me to come here to participate. Well, I think somehow my presentation will somehow relate it to the stories that we already heard just now about Thailand. But my presentation will not show any works by individual artists. I would like to share with you the story from Indonesia about artist collective initiative, which sort of like flourished in the last 10 years or so in many different parts of the country, especially big cities in Java. I mentioned it's somehow related to what happens in Thailand, in the sense that this is very much a story about a country experiencing a very new kind of democracy. So we experience about 3 decades of dictatorship under military regime from 1965, 1966 to 1998. So it's more or less 3 decades, 32 years to be precise, under the authoritarian government of Suharto. So this is a story about how this new digital technology being used by young generation nowadays to enjoy that freedom under this new democracy. In sort of like, at the same time, subliminally, most of this activism, I guess, in my opinion, subliminally, it's been used to connect with collective or community kind of activity because of the awareness of most of these activists. In their mind, they're still very much aware about the possibility of having another kind of authoritarian government. So basically, if we talk about information technology these days, digital technology and the internet these days, I would say we probably come with 2 different dissenting opinions. The first one is people who sort of like believe that we already reached the utopian model of democracy, where we can do anything with the internet and information technology. The other one, almost like the opposite, is the dystopian kind of opinion about this technology, which also have some truth in it. If we consider nowadays how much we share or submissively share information, personal information, via the internet and other mobile technology, it seems like we are not that worried anymore about being watched by Big Brother in terms of Orwellian model. So it's very confusing. At one hand, if we look at China today, until today, we sort of like still believe that the Big Brother, if the Big Brother really want to limit your freedom, they can, even under this, within this sort of like internet era, they can do that. But at the same time, we today, under this kind of freedom, submissively giving up our personal information very much through internet and mobile technology. So I'm not sure where we are now, actually. It's quite confusing. So for me, it's very interesting to look at some of this activism in Indonesia because it's very much related to the collective and community. It seems like this is the model that can re-engage the artistic endeavor organized by these artists and activists, cultural activists, so that they can sort of like always find a new way to make their activism or activities relevant with the real life situations. So after Reformasi, which we call reformations, after we gained independence, freedom and democracy in 1998, I would say that nowadays in Indonesia, we are witnessing contestations among state business corporations, political parties, and public at large in claiming the public space as well as cyberspace. Much of these activities somehow will fit into the utopian model of sort of like expansions of democracy because of digital technology, unprecedented type of democracy probably, where every citizen seems to be capable of doing whatever they want to express their opinions, to share their opinions, made possible by new technology. We can see video activism in Indonesia after 1998 suddenly like flourished. You can see like from 1998 to 2008, the sort of like artist collective flourished across the nations. I would not really use that kind of categorization. So I'm sure it's shifted. The categorization is not really fixed. So one time they are just like doing a lot of video activism or share or distribute video, but at one time they probably even produce their own video or organize workshops for video. So, okay, next slide I will show you just few examples how this activism try to overcome the issues of control either by the state or big corporations. Film industry in Indonesia, for instance, controlled by very few major investment companies. And the nationwide cinema is controlled mostly by one company only. So if you are a young filmmaker in Indonesia and you want to, you can produce cheaply your movie with this new technology nowadays. The problem for you is how you're going to distribute and find your viewers, your audience. Recently, a lot of this artist collective creating this kind of cinema. It's mobile cinema because you are available, you can get easily this very reasonably cheap projector, and then you bring your film with you either in flash disk or computer, PC, mobile PC computer, and you just organize using Twitter, Facebook or whatever, and then you will have your own audience. You can create your own cinema in the streets, in the corner of your neighborhood, and even invite them to your small art space. So more and more this type of activities now going on. One time, Ruang Rupa, an artist collective based in Jakarta, organized a show of this type of mobile cinema. And now it's being copied by a lot of other like community, and probably there is a plan to do a national kind of festival of this mobile cinema. I put underneath almost every slide the resource of each of my presentations, so that you can visit the website to get more information about this. The other one is this Kampung Halaman. Basically, in English, it means my hometown. Is a collective based in Jogja. This is for teens and youth only. But now it's sort of like evolved into many different things. So it's for Indonesian teens to share their opinion about Indonesia, the future of Indonesia. So they can do their own video. They can do their own video and then upload it and then share to their friends. Recently, they become sort of like watchdog as well to the local politicians, because sometimes you never know, you know, these school kids, they upload a video protesting about the school system as well, and you cannot ban it. You know? It's just being shared by their peer groups. It's probably not noticed by the local government either, but the idea somehow shared by the community. The other one is Forum Lenteng. They have many different activities, but the one that I would like to point out is Aku Masa initiative as one of the Forum Lenteng activities. This is an activity where they do workshop, introduce video or camera and digital technology to community, and then encourage them to make their own movie or documentary films about themselves, about their neighborhood, about their own life. So in a sense, it's about reclaiming back your own way of building your own history, rather than accepting whatever history has been told to you under the sort of like authoritarian regime. So you can visit their website and see more of that kind of documentary films created by community or young artists and share in the website. The other type of activities is trying to make relevant whatever new digital technology in a rather low income kind of social neighborhood. So Life Patch is one collective based in Jogja doing a lot of experimentations. One of the things that they do recently, because they witnessed that a lot of these young people who would like to drink alcohol in Jogja, but they don't have much money, right? And then they mix whatever substance. They cannot even differentiate ethanol and alcohol, which then can be very dangerous for your health. And some actually very severe cases happen among this youth. So Life Patch actually give them a workshop about how to properly do wine making with simple ingredients like pineapple, banana, and do it properly. So Life Patch is an organization, a collective, who do a lot of this kind of thing. And they are, because of internet, they also can expand their networks with other activists or artists who share the similar idea. So, for instance, just recently they are somehow connected with this Danish European activists who then came to Indonesia and gave a workshop, giving workshop about how to invert or to use a very simple webcam. If you invert the camera and adjust it into certain type of software in your computer, you can have a very simple microscope. It can enlarge things about 1,000 bigger. So this very simple tool now being distributed, this knowledge being distributed to schools, to many schools in Jogja, so that school children can do their own digital microscope, now observing their environment. So similar to that is this one in Surabaya, but they are much more into collaborative music and sound kind of experiments and video as well. So this is in East Java. Next. Similar to that is a House of Natural Fibers. I just want to point one recent project that they do that over there is trying to make biofuel out of this in the rice field. So a lot of during harvest in rice field in Indonesia, you have a lot of this leftover. Yeah? You just take the rice, and then the leftover sometimes traditionally burnt by the farmers, and then they will use the ashes to sort of like fertilize the soil again before the rainy season comes, so that they can plant the rice again. So now this collective try to use a certain type of bacteria that can ferment rice straws into a type of ethanol, and then with a certain type of pressure and mechanism, the ethanol will turn into gas. So the gas will be used by the farmer for cooking or other stuff. The problem is how to get this mechanism, this sort of like very simple, sustainable kind of environment project works. You need to know the seasons. And this data about climates in Indonesia very much controlled by the government and the military. So you need some friends who really good in doing a lot of things with computer to hack their server so that you can get the climate information nationwide. So you know when to harvest, when to replant, you know all the information, and try to share with the farmers, with your community, how to read and understand all those informations. So they hack the airport, climate sort of like informations, the National Meteorology Department server. This is very much sort of like a bit dangerous. I consider. Hopefully that the information not fall to the terrorists. That would be not good at all. So if you have Daegu Art Factory, we have one in West Java. It's called Jatiwangi Art Factory. Jatiwangi is a small village very close to Bandung in West Java. It's traditionally famous of making ceramics, roof tiles or even tiles or bricks. And sort of like in a state of poverty in general, generally speaking. Recently, a group of activists and artists decided to make a collective in Jatiwangi and start to introduce new ideas to the young generations there. Unfortunately, I cannot really zoom this presentation, but you can see here, they invite artists, musicians to do, for instance, ceramic music workshops for the young students. So they do a lot of activities, even doing a lot of video making as well with the students and community there in Jatiwangi. And then this is the last one. This is probably the only one in the world, as far as I know until today. It's called QWERTY Radio because it started during like 4 or 5 years ago when the BlackBerry was becoming very popular in Indonesia, so that you can text your requests of songs or your comments onto Twitter account provided by this collective, and then they will play your songs. It's sort of like audio streaming. It's a radio broadcasting. You know why they do this? Because to get your license to have a radio broadcast in Indonesia, you have to go through Ministry of Information, a lot of money, and approval by the military. So there is no point. These young people can have their own radio broadcasting stations. But because of internet and this new technology, now they can have. And now their followers, almost 75,000 followers already. So, and now they become very much connected, alive, and they get some money, little money to keep their operations going, because a lot of indie label musicians, not major label musicians, a lot of indie label musicians would like to share their songs or even contribute a little money as long as they play their records to this kind of this radio audience. So basically the way it operates is just you just tweet your request with a very specific hashtag created every day by the DJ in operation, and then you just request making comments or whatever, and then they will pick your songs through their database, and then you can access, you can listen to the songs that being played, audio stream, either using BlackBerry, whatever, my mobile phone, iPhone, websites as well. So I think the questions about the future of this technology in regards of the society or the new experience of democracy in Indonesia, for me, is about the fact that how long this type of activities can engage their activities with the real life situations of the community that will sort of like give them the real base to operate again and again. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense for me. It doesn't make sense. And in most of the cases that I just explained to you, I see artists as collaborators, partners, facilitators, rather than being artists, individual artists, in creating and producing sociability So it creates sort of like sociability where people or aesthetic experience as public experience can happen. So it's actually a platform where people encounter each other. It's convivial because it's sort of like friendly. It's not like you are against each other. You come into that kind of cyberspace in a convivial manner, in a friendly manner. It obviously make connections and meetings as well. So I guess I'm not really into utopian kind of way of thinking when it comes to technology, but I'm not that dystopian either. For me, it's very much how this new media, new technology can re-engage artistic practice with real-life situations is very much important in the future. Thank you.
어떠한 질문이든지 일어나셔가지고선 소개해 주시고요. 그리고 이제 어떤 분한테 질문하실지 지정해 주시기 바랍니다. 질문이 없으시니까 제가 먼저 질문 좀 드리겠습니다. 애닌 수프리얀토 씨한테 질문 드리는데요. 최근에 이제 족 자카르타라는 데가 정말 많은 국제적인 많은 이제 전문가들이 관심 갖는 공간이 됐습니다. 심지어 제가 이제 싱가포르 갔을 때는 마리나 아브로노비치도 방문을 했고 또 방문을 한다는 이야기를 하고 있습니다. 족 자카르타에서 좀 준비되고 있는 또 비엔날레도 준비하고 계시니까 그런 문화 이벤트들이 어떤 것들이 있는지 좀 설명해 주시면 감사하겠습니다.
Well, Yogyakarta is where most of Indonesian artists live. It's a very old city with the royal kingdom actually still there in Jogja. The late Java king still there. So it has a very what you call as special provincial status in Indonesia because of that. And there are two art schools, most influential art school in Indonesia since independence, 1945. The first one is in Bandung in West Java, and the second one is in Jogja. So that's why a lot of artists study in Jogja and then later on pursue their professional career, having studios and everything still in Jogja. And it's relatively cheaper cost of living in Jogja compared to Jakarta as well. So a lot of activities going on in Jogja. A lot of young artists have their own artist initiative kind of spaces around the city. Either those who specialize in photography or digital technology or just conventional type of arts, either painting, sculpture, many of them. And since 1970s, actually Jogja Biennale already established, but sort of like very on and off kind of situations because of funding from government. It's not constantly there. So just in the last 4 years, the young artists, the artists and activists, cultural activists in Jogja decided to negotiate with the Jogja city municipal government, and they asked the Jogja Biennale, which was officially almost always under the cultural sector of the city municipal government. They asked the government to give them the chance to make Jogja Biennale an independent kind of institutions. And after so many years of negotiation, it was approved. Finally, it is approved now. So starting 2 years ago, Jogja Biennale is control, manage, operate under independent artist activist organizations. Nothing to do with the government anymore. Even though the local government financially, physically, organization-wise, been very supportive, not really completely disconnected, but they don't control the program or the policy of the Biennale anymore.
Following from your answer, how much the presentation you showed, and you are more involved with the non-profit activities, non-profit Biennale, but for the last 5 years, Indonesian artists, their marketability in auction market art fair, and maybe that's why Singapore art stage they invited the Indonesian pavilion, right? So how much Indonesian the Biennale, because you said they now is pretty much independent from the government support. So how much your the non-profit event is free from the market force?
For the time being, what the Biennale Foundation in Jogja tried to do is they form what we call as the Friends of the Biennale. In this case, the Friends of the Biennale, a lot of young collectors actually involved in that circle, even commercial galleries. But they cannot influence the board of directors. They can be friends of Biennale in terms of hosting social events or being sponsors of a certain part of the activities of the Biennale. But they cannot really incite or control the whole mechanism or the whole management of the Biennale. Yes, it's true, this probably made possible because of the current economic growth and also the fact that a lot of new collectors, galleries, now involved in the market as well, in the art market in Indonesia. But aside from that, I think the interest of regional or international market towards Indonesia is not only about the artworks and the artists. It's also about the growing market of collectors in Indonesia. If you compare Indonesia with China in 1980s, probably in the mid-1980s until just recently in early 90s, almost no collectors in China who collect Chinese artworks. You mentioned the name like Yu Minjun, Fang Lijun, all those big blockbusters, money-making artists in China. They never been collected by the local collectors in the early stage of their career. But that's not the case with Indonesia. Indonesian artists always very much rely on the local market.
Excellent.
Very much, yeah. That's true, you know. It's not really... Now if you look at the records price of Hong Kong, Christie's or Sotheby's record price of Indonesian paintings, mostly bought by Indonesians themselves, not really by other collectors from other countries. I think because of that, a lot of European countries now, or galleries, commercial galleries from European countries, try to tap on that market, including the special case of Indonesian Pavilion in Singapore is one way, not really presenting Indonesian artists, but about tapping the Indonesian money. It's my opinion.
질문 없으십니까? The next question directed to both of you regarding censorship. From my impression of the Indonesian pavilion in Singapore, most of our talks is based in like the really figurative, really like the political images and very good social activist style. Are there any certain level of censorship? Then I will ask you a question.
Yes, there is. The most obvious one is something, anything to do with religions, which somehow, that is the border, I think. Not sexuality, not nudity, nothing to do with the whoever in power in terms of political leaders. You can do anything. I can say bad things about my president now. I'm happy to go back home tomorrow without, no one will touch me. I'm quite sure about that.
Religion means Muslim?
Obviously, yes, Muslim, because they are the majority of the population. But at the same time, because of this new digital technology and internet, you cannot really. For me, it's very important why I stress the point how this new digital technology being used to re-engage artistic expressions or freedom of expression, to re-engage itself again and again with the community, because in my opinion, it has to come into a very specific point, which I will call a point of no return in experiencing democracy for the Indonesian people. Once you gain that or reach that point, then I believe that there will be very small possibility of any kind of authoritarian regime can control the country anymore, because most of the people will already experience that or already reach that point of no return of having democracy in their daily life. After that, I don't think even in Indonesia with the most populous Muslim, I don't think any rightist wings Islamists will ever control the country. I'm quite optimistic about that. Please check Indonesian modern history. Since the first general election we have, since then until most recent elections, general election, we always have more than one Muslim-based political party, and none of them ever won election. None. Wow. Isn't that ironic? Yeah? None. You can check Wikipedia or whatever. Since 1955, there are always Muslim-based kind of political parties and entitled for general election. None of them ever win elections. None.
That's wow. Next question to Professor Propan. From your presentation, I saw the color has a big it's symbolizing the either power or king. Like the yellow is symbolize the birth of a king, and red means something from the north part of the capital. And also, one of you, the work by Bennett is Horror in Pink in 2001, and and Shakespeare Must Die is banned because of its connotation with negative connotation against the political power. So, are there still that kind of censorship against the color in visual art?
Not really.
Not really.
I think a lot of the play on colours comes from even the national anthem. The Thai national anthem sings about red standing for country, white standing for religion, and blue standing for monarchy. So a lot of that kind of propaganda actually comes from notions of nation building. So it comes from, it has a history in schools, it has a history in even Boy Scouts. Boy Scouts in Thailand was actually set up during the days when United Nations agreement made an agreement saying that there will be no soldiers on the certain borders. But of course, Thailand invented a Thai version of Boy Scouts, which were semi-military. So it's a strange, has a strange history in
그 질문 없으신가요? 그 질문 좀 해주시면 좋겠는데. 아마노상.
Okay. As my private story, I am now working with Singapore Art Museum to study about the Southeast Asia right now, and but I'm not sure about the history of still the Indonesian, history. But on the other hand, in Japan, the reputation of Indonesia is quite well because for example, some days ago, then some newspaper said that we should catch up the Indonesia, so because the economic situation has been very developing, and GDP as well, and also Indonesia, should belong to the one of the BRICS, So, but on the other hand, the kind of very much, the blight aspect of your history. But on the other hand, you still have a very much complicated situation, like the activity of activists. What kind of, I would like to know, the more clearly, what kind of the structure of a society, the kind of major the aspect of your country, and about the behind, or not invisible, but the what kind of a structure in the behind. But so the gap, I feel so there's still gap between the kind of the two faces in your country. So 2 or 3, I'm more complicated, aspects.
Well, I'm not really a political scientist, but I think the most important thing is the fact that I don't think Indonesian people nowadays will give up whatever experience that has been influenced their life until today under democracy. I don't think that is the most important thing, I guess, nowadays, that sort of like create the atmosphere in generally speaking for most Indonesians. I know sometimes this case about Islamist wings doing their terrors in some part of Indonesia being blown up as if it's already successfully controlled the country. It's not really true. Most Indonesians, yeah, they are Muslims, but as I mentioned before, it's a very clear fact. When it comes into sort of like really official kind of government system, it's not automatically that these Indonesians will submit their political trust to a political parties that has a strong Islam connotations. They never win. None of these Muslim or Islam-based political party ever win in the Indonesian general election. Isn't that quite ironic? But that's the truth. So most Indonesians actually more into the centrist kind of, nationalist centrist kind of positions in this case. The other thing is, of course, I think the current government at least quite supportive in trying to reach a point of clean governance kind of situation. So lately the National Anti-Corruption Body has been quite active in doing their jobs, arresting, interrogating even high-rank political elites in Indonesia, and they gain a lot of support from the people, of course. So I think we are hopefully with this current situation, so Indonesia will probably one of those very few countries in Southeast Asia which will gain sort of like quite mature kind of democratic society compared to others. I mean, I don't consider Singapore as democracy, of course. Not even you. I'm really sorry, but it's a bit scary for me, for instance, for those. This is very much personal for me as well. I was very much activist, student activist under Suharto. I was imprisoned for 3 years under Suharto. So for me, freedom is big deal, you know, big deal. Either you are talking about military regime, civilian authoritarian regime, or monarchy. For me, no way. It's scary. So for me, it's very important for me to think about digital internet and new media, bring together the people, Indonesian people experience to that point of no return, where you can sort of like experience the sweetness or the fruitful life enriching experience of democracy. Once you come to that point, I don't think any authoritarian regime can take over easily in the future. I don't think people will easily submit or submissively give up their freedoms after that point.
Thank you.
No question for Joe. As we know that sorry. As we know that we work as a curator in Bangkok, and there's a new open space in Bangkok, like connected with Taiwanese artists and artists in Bangkok. It's called Open Contemporary, right? And also you just mentioned about that Apichabong. It's not that very famous in Thailand, but it's actually pretty famous in Taiwan or in Japan, I guess. So, and he also runs a film school in Thailand, right? Yes, I want to know that does your government support that a lot for open space or open art space, and also the model like a case of Apichabong. Is it does this inspire a lot of youngsters in Thailand who want to work in
I think
art
that
field?
there are two answers, well, two questions.
Yes.
First question is government support for artist-run spaces and art spaces. I actually have a background in Project 304, which is an artist-run space which started in 1997. To answer that, there's no funding at all from the government towards any kind of contemporary art space. There is some funding towards Bangkok Art Center, which is a relatively new place. But the only funding for that is for kind of curated exhibitions. So it's not really funding artist initiatives. It's more funding curators who can write a big proposal for,
Institutional.
Yeah, so it's kind of institutional. And so that's very clear. That's always been made clear. There's no illusion there. That the government gives money to some people, and they just give no money, which is I'm looking at it from a challenging perspective. So it lends the support towards other people. More recently, there's been this kind of commercial initiatives from companies to do, to do good for community. For instance, beer company, are encouraged to do good, or Toyota are encouraged to do, CSR. And that's been having some effect, but not much effect on artist-run initiatives. And in regards to Apichatpong, Apichatpong, I mean, I was talking to him the other day, and he was saying that somebody from the government Ministry of Health wanted to ask him, commission him, with a lot of money, a big budget company, to do an anti-smoking video. And then he was telling me, just like, I don't smoke, and I've never smoked, and and my partner smokes a lot, and I think it's okay. So I don't want to do an anti-smoking video. I don't feel it, which is obviously respectable thing to do as an artist. But I think he's been highly inspirational for a lot of students and a lot of younger people. But the sad thing is that this idea of the next Apichatpong wannabe, people who really want to be like him and use his similar visual language and answer to similar kind of ways or whatever, but not really delivering any parallel works, which is, I mean, it's a sad thing for me not to be encouraging. But the positive side is that it makes these younger generations feel that it's possible for them to stand up as with their own ideas on films, even if they have no interest in visual art and they just have interest in looking cool on screen. That's fine. I think it's good. Yeah. And I think it is having a very positive effect on the creative community. There's a big problem in Thailand in terms of the different worlds, filmmakers, advertising people, graphic designers, theater people. We don't really get together at all. So it's a separate kind of bubble of people. And in many ways, Apichatpong manages to burst some of the balloons that the film people and the visual art people, and because Apichatpong was also very active in Project 304 artist-run initiatives. I remember the days of us brainstorming, ideas of how to apply for funding from various countries, and it was fun. It was important to brainstorm and share ideas. We had interior designers being in our group. We had painters and sculptors and different people. Thank you for your question.
저는 질문이 같은 질문이었었어요. 아피차퐁에 대한 질문이었는데 지금 말씀해 주셔가지고 저는 지금 여기 앞에 계신 선생님께서 하신 질문과 되게 비슷해가지고 근데 아피차퐁 감독에 대한 잠깐 다른 질문을 하고 싶은데 그 칸느 영화제에서 상을 받고서 저희가 이제 한국에서 그 상영하는 영화를 봤는데 굉장히 난해했어요. 그래가지고 사실 그 내용적인 측면에 잘 이해가 안 돼가지고 지금 막 여러 가지 정보도 찾아보려고 했지만 잘 알 수가 없었어요. 근데 오늘 지금 그 강연에서 약간 이제 이해는 갔지만 그런 난해한 부분들을 조금 더 그 지금 물론 태국에서 그렇게 유명하진 않다고 하시지만 그래도 문학의 사람들에게는 굉장히 유명할 것 같은데 그 난해함이 그 태국에서는 문화적으로 어떤 더 이해력이 있어서 태국 사람들한테 더 이해가 잘 되는 것인지 아니면 실제로 더 많은 연구를 해야지만 그 작품을 이해할 수 있는 건지 어떻게 보면 그 영화라기보다 미디어 아트처럼 굉장히 난해한 부분이 많은데 그 부분에 대해서 한번 질문해 보고 싶습니다.
That's a very good question, and it's a question that I enjoy. I'm enjoying the fact that I can answer in my own interpretations. I think Apichatpong's work is very easily understood by the working classes, people who cleaning ladies in Bangkok, or people who work up country in throughout Thailand, because he uses very down to earth human experiences to connect each protagonist or each person in his movies. But his work is most difficult to understand by the educated community, people with degrees, with university degrees, people with too much exposure to American mainstream movies, people with, who watch too much soap opera or something like that would have a problem with his work, because it's the idea of anticipating a language. Apichatpong deconstructs all of that tradition that we are familiar with, and he purifies his own kind of, in my language, I say it's very whimsical language, very kind of, very casual, but effective. I think it goes back to maybe a universal kind of language that people in Liverpool, in England, can just watch his film by accident and actually understand it, as well as somebody from upcountry rice fields of Thailand. So for me, that is where the interesting thing is.
Thank you.
Hello. I think I'm really appreciative about Ian. He brings us like so many cases in Indonesia. There's just, I see so many young artists or young institutions that are doing like a kind of where use the digital the sort of like information to share into each other. Then, but I would like to ask them, how do you think about the artists turns themselves become an information center, then to influence their power to the general public? Then because of the you also mentioned during your presentations about the like a socialized issue or political issue is quite okay. You can speak right now, but for the regency, it's quite difficult. But during this part, I couldn't really get it. But can you tell us about it here? Then also, how do you think about the like a free world, freedom thing for the artists for the next generations? Thank you.
The first part I didn't really. Could you just rephrase your first question?
Like how do you think about the artists that turns themselves, like they have a blog, they have a website to sharing the idea or sharing of like Twitters, and you mentioned about like one broadcasting, like they can become like a platform. Then how do you expect like they can influence to the general public?
Most of the activities that I presented just now is initiated by Artist Collective, and it's almost always the case that their project is in a model of workshop with community. So it's not really individual works by each artist, or even though artists involved in the projects, it's almost very much about artists being facilitator, being collaborator with community, either school children or even just neighborhood kind of or farming community. It varies. Different type of activities, different type of community all the time. I'm not saying that there are no Indonesian artists who produce works with the digital technology as the core part of their works. There are some, but I'm not really into that. You know, I think most of the presentations by the Korean artists yesterday are very much into that, and for me, it's very understandable. It's a country where this sort of like technical digital inventions become part of the core economic agenda and activities in Korea. So it is individual inventiveness will be somehow rewarded. But I come from completely different background. Indonesia is never noticed as a country of producing digital or technological kind of advanced technology kind of inventions. No, we are very much about natural resources, right? So, but at the same time, we experience a very specific type of social political transformation in which digital technology somehow play a very critical role in the middle of that transformation. So I'm much more interested into that. So how about the future generations? Most of them who are now, let's say, 10 years old, 12 years old, or probably 15 years old, we consider them as the native netizens. Yeah. They don't have problem. I think they already reached that point of no return. When I talk about this point of no returns, I'm mentioning, I actually referring to the generations of my generation or those in the 30s or even older, which still very much the biggest part of the population. The other thing, but when we talk about this young generation, then my concern is about this dystopian model. You know, they never experience whatever life under authoritarian regime. They consider that freedom is given, and as much as freedom is given, I wonder whether they are critically also aware about how much they give or submit deliberately or even voluntarily their personal life to whoever there is. That's why in my very brief writing, I quoted Eric Smith, inviting you, the more you give us your personal information using Gmail's Gmail box for your documents, the more you give us your information, the better we will serve you. Well, it's a very nice way to put it, but on the other hand, you never know how this big corporation will use their personal information in many different ways, and it's not necessarily means for your benefit. So that's the challenge for the future generations, how much they will critically exercise this freedom.
시간이 다 돼서요. 이제 다음 그 순서로 넘어가겠습니다. Thank you for your beautiful and clear explanation of the